So I'll call to order the Cable Licensing Subcommittee on September 28th, 2022. The time is 11:24 a.m. And this will kick it off with organizing the subcommittee.
Sure.
I guess we'll hear for chair, nominations for chair.
I'll nominate Kevin.
Okay.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
so Kevin is the chair. And if the chair wants to take over.
Sure. I think you'd probably want to have a vice chairman sitting on it as well. So any nominations for vice chairman?
Can I nominate? I'll nominate Fred.
Yeah, you can nominate whoever you like.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so we have a nomination for Fred. I'll second it. Any discussion? Any other candidates? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 And then I figured I'd be secretary. I don't know if you need to nominate that or.
No.
Okay. I'll be secretary then.
Thank you.
All right, so committee organization is done, so we have to set a public hearing date?
Yeah, and I guess we could just discuss it. I guess there's different strategies with what we want to do with the public hearing. I think in the guidelines for Massachusetts, it talks about having a public hearing after we've heard back from Charter, but I don't know, Bill, if you have any ideas
Yeah,
on that.
I thought maybe what we could do is go through some of the other things we get at the end, because the hearing, to a large extent, is a strategic, it's a legal question you need to have, and I'll explain what the two laws are. But it's more a strategic issue of what's the best time to have it in order to obtain what your goal is. And so I think after we discuss things today, I'll have a better sense of what I think a good timing would be, and then see what you folks think.
All right, that works.
Okay.
So ascertainment documents draft review.
So that's you guys have the document. It is double-sided. And this is pretty much our draft proposal to Charter on what we think. It kind of gives an overview of our entire program, the town, what our needs are, what we've done to date, and what we plan to do. So I know it's a lot of stuff. I don't know if you guys want to take it and read it, but
Well, I think, if you like, and Matt, you can go through it. Also, I thought maybe just we'll begin with like an overview, if that helps. And
Yep.
Firstly, good to be here. Thank you, Bill Solomon, Cable Council for the town. It's good to be back, and I look forward to, achieving what your aims are on the cable license. Let me just say that, cable is pursuant to the Cable Act. It's an amazing law. It incentivizes both sides to sit at the table and work things out. It doesn't incentivize administrative hearings or lawsuits, and it begins, as you know, with your ascertaining the future cable-related community needs and interests, which Pat's been working very hard on for you. We've been working together on it for, I'd say, a year. Capital plan and a wide array of issues. So let me just begin with just that never has community television, PEG access, been more important. And never has it been understood to be more important. And you know the reason why, because of COVID and now the post-COVID world. So maybe I just can begin, and this is things you already know, but let Pat just briefly reference his memo about how COVID has changed operations and maybe some of the things that were done in Douglas to keep government alive. The separate memo that I provided here, there's a quote by someone, Board of Selectmen, who said that in our town, they said, democracy would have died for almost a year of COVID-19, but during COVID-19, if it were not for the actions and assistance of community television. And that's true in most places, because there was no way to connect to people for a while. So Pat, maybe you could just briefly reiterate what these folks already know, how important was community television, your program here in Douglas, which is government-run?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we integrated multiple various conferencing systems through our cable feed and through the presentation system that we have in the room to allow either fully remote access to meetings or hybrid meetings where people would show up in the room and be interacting with folks online. So, that, a lot of that came through the systems that we already had in place. So we were able to sort of not miss a beat and just keep going with the town, the business of the town overall. But, I reference it in this memo, but, our systems that we did set in place were set up for different reasons, and we were lucky to be able to configure them, in a way that worked for us during COVID. But looking forward at that same type of, if that same type of issue or event were ever to come up again, I'd like to have something that was more designed for that overall.
Okay, now the board members know, you know better than I, you tell me, has the town continued with some hybrid meetings, or will it be continuing? Will there?
We're following pace with the state. So is the state still allowing under open meeting law for us to have public meetings or offer a hybrid-based solution? We're kind of taking our cadence from the Commonwealth.
Okay.
So they are still available now.
And I know in a lot of towns, public expectations changed once they got used to being able to participate in government and to do it from home if they had children or at a certain time, that expectation has carried on. So I know in most places they're preparing, as you said the law will change somehow, but regardless of what the law says, that at least in most places, there's an expectation that at least for certain meetings, that people would like to be able to see and participate from home. I'll tell you something you already know, that there's not I work across the Commonwealth, I've worked on over 100 licenses. There's not a town in the Commonwealth that does more government meetings than Douglas. There's no town that comes close to 100% of the meetings. So you are by yourself. So it would surprise me that, given the fact that people have had an opportunity to watch these meetings for so long, unlike any other, there are some towns that do a good deal, but no one comes close to 100%. Given the fact that people are used to that and understand that they can watch and keep up with things in an age where the newspapers are often disappearing, or they don't cover local events, or they cover the bad things and not what's really going on from most of the time, that I would think that in Douglas that there would be that desire to continue. And that's, and so again, people not only has community television never been more important, but it's never been understood to be that important. And one of the things about COVID is, you forget pretty quickly, but early on, people understood, wow, these people are important. The people who are still doing the work and getting things done and picking up the rubbish and policing and running systems in private industry, that all of a sudden people realize they're really important. And the people who you thought were important, they weren't going to work. They were home. So I think that's community television. It's no longer perceived as two guys in their basement, but it's a part of community and the part of the connection between government and the public and government, and the part of connection between community groups and the local economy. Even though there's not a lot of business, you have business, the local economy, and the public. So those connections, which are more in the old world in terms of the type of connection, and it has a personal aspect. It's not like the electronic age of Facebook and everything else. It's because it takes some effort and it takes different things. So that gets to the question in cable. The first question is, how important is PEG access, government access, educational access? How important is that to the town? Is it something that the town thinks, the board thinks is of great importance, and would like to continue as strong as it is, or even building? Or is it something that if it had to diminish or be cut back or disappeared, that's life. The only thing certain in life is change. So maybe you could tell me, from your perspective, how important do you think your community program, government programming is to the residents and to the town itself?
Well, I can't speak for all the residents, but I kind of know the general trend of Douglas is we do not like taking services away. We went through a long period of time, due to budget constraints, that we were scaling back government services and things like that. But I think we managed to keep cable running the way that it wanted to. And, obviously our financial situation's changed. We're in a better spot.
Great.
But I know that there's really no appetite for at least for my board, to start scaling back any services. If anything, we'd be more apt to build on it. If there's a way that we can offer additional value add, it makes perfect sense to me.
Okay, great.
And people need to keep in mind too, it doesn't help just the cable subscribers, it's every citizen with access to a computer.
That's right.
So it's not just the bill paying, people paying the cable bill, it's the
right.
entire town it helps.
That's right.
And I think the system, though we have it, runs quite well.
Good, yeah, no, you have a great setup here. All right, so then with that, what's interesting about our current license, and also the way it developed, how it was implemented, it sort of, and the operating support for community programming, it provides some flexibility. And I'm going to suggest that we continue that. And then it provides a capital number, and I'll suggest, I think, we can work with that capital number. So why don't we just, for now, Pat, why don't we just very briefly take the folks through your ascertainment report, the topic, and one or two thoughts on each one, so we see the panoply of issues, and then I'll give you my thoughts on maybe, where you want to go, and we'll go back and forth on that.
Okay. So right in the beginning, introduction and overview, just kind of gives an overview of our summary and goals. Continued coverage and cablecasting of 100% government open meetings. That's always been a first and foremost primary goal of the Cable Committee. Increased need for coverage and cablecasting of public events. As we have events that happen, people submit them and we cover them. We cover like Oktoberfest, Memorial Day, things like that come up. And I use my people who generally do government meetings will also do those meetings as well. So we like to be able to do anything that gets submitted, really. And as, the appetite increases for that, we'd like to be able to staff them. Upgrades to existing equipment, including our main recording rooms, field equipment, and town hall broadcasting systems. So we have a couple rooms that we have set up for recording meetings, and then we have camera kits that we bring out to other locations to record meetings. So basically, we just want to be able to continue to upgrade those. Like we have this new sound system, which is really nice. Really adds a lot of I don't know, I guess I'm blanking on the word, but it increased the
For government meetings
for
particularly?
government meetings
Yeah, people can really follow what's
Yeah.
said, and
And increase the quality.
increased quality,
that's
that's the
great.
word I was looking for.
As long as you can get the selectmen to stop messing with the mics.
So, increased funding for the idea if we have more events to cover or we have more committees or anything like that, just to be able to handle that kind of increased coverage for programming. I'd like to see the Fairfield Library and the Adult Social Center rigged with the fiber optic needs in order to originate programming from both, because we could use, say, like the library for, we could run a line there to have live Oktoberfest coverage and things that happen on Main Street. And the Adult Social Center definitely picked up quite a bit of programming during COVID, where they were trying to help people at home exercise, things like that. So, and I think they've definitely been the most increased coverage over the past few years. The senior center has just been doing a lot of stuff with us, so that's great. Possibly some new focus on building some of the educational access coverage. They used to have some folks over at the school that covered that, and I think they've had some staffing changes, and so I've been kind of plugging in their channel and running their channel for a little while, but I'm not sure that they're doing a lot with actual programming at the school. So if that was something that would come to our office, then we'd have to increase a little bit of coverage there as well. Bill, the SDI upgrade, we do have fiber here and the school, so that was a.
Right, and the issue would be do you have modulators or transmitters, or
Transmitters,
are they yours or the company's?
they're charters.
So does it transmit in SDI?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I would be down here, it's if it hasn't already occurred, so.
Right, okay, yeah.
If it transmits in SDI, the higher, it's serial digital interface, it's a higher quality than standard definition, as you probably know, but not quite high definition, so that's great.
Yeah, and they definitely don't broadcast us in high def, but.
Right, and we talked about, most companies provided like one, at least, a high definition channel. The advantage of high definition is that when you have your meeting and you have something on a monitor, or you actually, you have it on the computer, so it goes to the public through the computer, high definition lets people look at that budget. So if you want to talk about a budget and have people see it in an age of PowerPoint where people like to see and hear things, high definition allows them to be home and to see what you're presenting. Otherwise, it's just a blur. So if we could, for most boards, if you could have high def for the numbers and low def for the faces, people get around, but you could, but that's the advantage. So interesting enough, before high definition came, most folks thought that, well, if you have 3 channels, the public channel would be the high definition, because there's more video and film and things scenic, and it just would naturally seem to be the public channel. But because of the importance in many towns of seeing the presentation, as I just mentioned, many more towns than not make the government channel the high definition if they just have one channel, high def channel. And that's the way it sort of turned out, contrary to what one would have thought.
Is there a way we can get them to increase the amount of high def channels they're willing to broadcast?
Well, that's a great point. We're going to put down here what we're looking for. These are your needs and interests, and the law presumes that you know best what's needed. Now, most companies, and they can try to, usually provide one, but if we have a need and an interest, we should let them know that we'd like 3. So there's different possibilities. If it can't be done at first, well, we want it down the line. Or if that becomes the standard for charter, we then don't have to wait 10 years to get an additional 1 or 2 channels. So we can, if the committee agrees, we can indicate that the need and interest is for 3, and that we're willing to work with them on the timing of the 2nd and 3rd, if you like that.
For consideration.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of wraps up the summary and goals. So there's not a lot,
Yeah, I can add just 2 on that. The other one was the electronic program guide.
Oh, that's right.
And as you know, that if you have cable, electronic program lets you look to see what's coming up now and today and then next week, and you can set it for your DVR so people can know what's coming up on PEG Access, or they want to record that meeting. And certainly the technology's there to do that. There's some challenges sometimes when a company has a head end that has multiple towns, there's different things. But it's doable. I was able to receive it with one company in a side letter on an island, which is just towns by them, Martha's Vineyard by themselves. So in most communities, we now reflect what the town wants, which is to say they want the electronic program guide. And it's a challenging issue with the company, but I think my recommendation would be to continue to have it in the ascertainment and to make the case, and then ask Charter, well, explain, if they say they can't do it, explain why you can't do that. It's a great technology company, what are the obstacles? And then talk about some way where, again, that can be implemented, if not right away, during the 10-year license period.
So I do have a question on that. And I worked for Comcast for about 12 and a half years, so I'm very versed in the
Right.
cable industry.
Yes.
And I know one of the things prior to my departure from Comcast, which is about 3 years ago, was putting all of the PEG access, local access channels available off of their streaming service. So I'm not sure if Charter is doing that, or is that something that we can ask that they look into doing? Because more and more people are streaming, and less people are actually putting a desktop box on.
Yeah, here's my thoughts. Ustream, right? So although cable companies, make more money now, as you know, from internet than they do from cable.
Yes.
And so when internet first came, if you discuss internet, that's not cable, and we get funded by cable, but they can for years now, they can no longer take that position because everything's merging, which is the challenge to the cable business here. So but it still would be contrary to their view of there's cable and there's internet for purposes of this license. And I do think since, you can do it yourself, I think we're best, you do it yourself, that's fine. There's no objection on anyone's part, on their part. But not ask them to do that, but ask them to do the electronic program guide, because that we can't do on our own. That's their program guide, as you know. They hire a company, and so we want to be treated like every other channel. We'd like the chance to give our information to that company,
So
and they put it on.
broadcast that content.
Right, so I think it's a good idea, but I think I'd rather focus on the thing we can't control ourselves and not ask them, because there's only a limited number of things we'll get over the line. So I would prioritize the program guide first, and that's an issue I think we could raise with them and talk about, but just see where they are on that. But on the program guide, explain, that's a firm need of the town, and we think that's something that needs to be done within this license.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And I'd also like to see if they would start, I don't know if Comcast, there was an initiative beginning, that public access was going to be part of their app.
Oh, yes.
So I'm not sure if Charter's willing to do the exact same
Well, that's very interesting. Same type of thing we can
ask, but
we can ask about. The other side of those coins are always, again, the funding is, as you know, only the cable. So sometimes the antennas go up, but there's nothing wrong in asking, have you looked at this, or what are you thinking on it?
Yeah.
We're not requiring or even requesting, but you know what? If you're doing it, great. If you're not, then, if you think about it, let us know. So I think that's interesting. I didn't know that, so that's great.
yeah, it's just one of those things, like, you're looking at the younger generations that are coming through.
Right.
And they don't even call it watching TV, they call it consuming content.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how they refer to it. But they're doing it all on devices. Like, they
Yeah.
don't have TVs, and they're watching Netflix on their phones, on their tablets. So they're using the Charter app, the Comcast app, the AT&T app.
Yeah, well, in fact, very interesting, in one town where we're just going to sign with Comcast in 2 weeks, been a long process, very, very advanced, I've worked with them for 30 years, and they asked Comcast, instead of providing cable service to the public buildings in school, to give them a code so they can go on and in fact, use an app.
Yep.
And Comcast does that. They haven't done it with cities and towns for providing video to them, but they looked at it in good faith. I don't know if you know Jerry Buckley.
Yeah, I know.
Yep, Jerry, good guy, and I looked at it, and they just don't do it now. But it's something that, they do outside of the government, and they may at one point for the same reason, because the argument of the town was, this would be cheaper for you, rather than, having drops in buildings, even if it's only one drop in one outlet, they can break or something happen. It'll be less costly for you if you just give us the code for the app, and we can have these TVs get the programming on the internet. So, great point, and I have that down. We definitely want to ask Charter,
Yeah.
not at the start, but as we go along, are they looking at it, what are their thoughts? And then I think we can build from their response as to what we like to see going forward.
Yeah, I think it would make sense to them. I mean, if I was going to give them the pitch, is we do have a pretty good viewer base. I know a lot of it's the older people watching the selectmen's meetings and things like that. But if that became an embedded feature inside of their app for streaming, you'd grab a whole new group of younger
Right.
folks that could actually pay attention to what's going on.
Well, that's right. It's like I always say, they shouldn't just play baseball at night. When we were growing up, there were day games, right? So you could watch
Yeah.
a game, come home from school, and you lose building that fan base.
Yeah.
Community PEG access is an important part of their programming. As you know, if the meeting isn't on, people said, what happened? There are 500 channels. And if you took a look where community television was, it's in the top 20 of their channels. And there's 500, 600 behind that. So it's important for them. I used to tell the story with another company where they came in and in one town, they sent a new representative. I'd done a lot of license, the initial license with this company. I'd done about 15, maybe never 16. And the one town, it was going to go to public access, that it's going to be run by nonprofit, but it was run by Comcast at that point. And so he was with another company, this gentleman, and he wanted the town to pay to connect, to get the programming, the signal from Comcast, because everything went through the Comcast system to the hub site, so why should they ride on that for free? And he wanted the town to pay for that, and until we were separate from a company-run studio, it didn't make sense. So, I said, well, we don't want, the town doesn't want it, we don't want to. So, so they're not going to do it. He goes, well, we have to have the PEG access program, we have to have it. I said, well, doesn't that tell you, if you have to have it, who should pay for it? And he goes, good point. And if there was no PEG access under the current law, those companies would ask to get it from you, and you would reach a deal based on the market. All right, well, we need you to pay this.
Yeah, fair
So-
market value equals that.
Exactly. So that tells you it has value because they want it and need it, which great companies like Comcast understand. Some other companies, everyone understands it to some degree, but the old-time companies that began as small companies and worked their way through do. So with that said, just to see if there's anything else, you have the mission statement, very in-depth. Pat gives you the government program hours. It began in 2006, 35, and 2021, not hours, but programs. The cable gets 216 programs, 3,216 over that period of time. As I said, no town more. There's a capital plan. The capital plan is it 238,000, Pat?
Yes.
$238,800, and then it describes all the setup and what's there. And is there a separate, do we have the capital plan from Gary Pink? I can't remember. I'm confusing community.
I don't have his included here. He did have, it was more designed towards like a studio build out.
Oh, okay,
So I told him
right.
that didn't really relate.
So we're going to provide this to the charter representative when we meet, and if they're not familiar already with Douglas, explain how important community television is to the town and to the residents. So with that, let me just say the risk on funding, as cable transitions, there's a tremendous risk to funding, and there's the risk of technological change, consumer choice. There's the challenge of cable companies have started to calculate their cable revenue when it's bundled, cable, telephone, and internet. Some companies have now, changed, wrongly or rightly in some cases, how they calculate what portion of that bundle is cable. Traditionally, cable might have been $60 or $70 a month. And so when cable companies first went into the business, they say, well, just $15 more and you can have telephone. And now you can have internet for 20, because they were looking for their existing customers to add those things. But in the world we're in now, where the competition is more video, less internet, there are not a lot of wired, at least, internet providers. There'll be wireless, but not all wired. That there's an incentive potentially for companies to say, well, that $120 package and $80 was cable. Well, actually, really what it is now is that, it's $80 for internet, and if you just pay us 20 more, you get cable. So to let people think that, you just have to add a little more, so why go to streaming when for $20 you can get this? So you can see what that does to your revenue, regardless of what percentage of gross revenue you get, or here we get a set dollar amount, which is good. That, in the percentage world, you could lose 10, 20, 40, 60, 80% of your revenue, and you don't want to be in a fight about that. So, and then finally, there's the FCC in-kind consideration rule. As I say with Comcast, I believe based on feel and more, that they couldn't care less about that at the time. They just, they had their cable association, they filed their comments. To Comcast, I think it's more of a, at this point in time, maybe not later, more of a hassle than it is a benefit. The in-kind consideration rule, as you may know, said that after 40 years of saying, for instance, that cable service to public buildings, to your town hall, to your schools, to Jimmy and Sally in school, which cable companies first, when they came to town, said, we'd like to get in the right of way. You had theaters saying, fight pay TV. And, and we'll, hey, by the way, this cable service, we'll give you everything but the real premium stuff. We'll give it to your town buildings and your school for nothing. Because, we'd like to be there, we want to be good citizens, and it was a good idea. It didn't cost a lot to give it. So they did that for 40 years, and then companies like Charter then went to the FCC and said that they were shocked to find out that should have counted toward your franchise fee. And so the towns were breaking our legs and forcing us to do all these free things like cable service to public buildings, when really, they offered it. And it just happened to get into the license because it was memorialized. It wasn't like they wanted to do it. So that has not been implemented by most companies, but Charter was a lead company in pushing that. So that as we go along, there may be things that they will be able to say that this is not PEG capital, which is not part of the franchise fee, and it's an in-kind consideration, and that should count to the franchise fee, the 5% cap that towns have. Now, the good news was, even though the appeals court upheld that decision, they picked a good court, the court, in its wisdom, rightly decided that the FCC's argument that the market value of those services should count to the franchise fee. So here's cable service for a public building. If we sell that normally for $80 per place, then we can get $80 should count to your franchise fee. And the court, accepting the argument made by folks in Massachusetts, said, no. It's not the market value that counts to the franchise fee. It's your marginal cost. What does it cost you, Charter, to provide cable service? That can count toward the 5% cap, but not some idea of market value. Who made that up? Where did that come from? The Cable Act says nothing about market value. So that really diminished the risk, but there's still some risk, particularly with Charter. So we have a changing world where people drop and shave the cord. We have the re-looking at figuring out what portion of the bundle is cable, and we have the in-kind consideration rule. All of those are risks to the what Charter pays the town to use your public way. And why do they pay the town under the Cable Act, capped at 5%, and the process for PEG capital? Because your roads, you buy or take, you maintain, you police, you insure, and they're using that for their business. And so that's the basis of why a company would pay. Could they pass that on to their subscribers? Every company has to figure out what they charge their customers for them running their business. The cable law says they can put it on the bill, but by the way, even though they could put something on a bill, whether or not they're really charging their customers is a different matter, because in a world where there's some competition, a cable company can't just raise the rates. So while they could put on a bill, well, this is $1.20, that what they really have is a full rate. And they may say, well, given the competitive world, we don't want to go up 5% this year on our rates. We want to go up 1%, or we don't want to go up. So the fact they can put on the bill what they attribute as a cost from the license doesn't mean that they're actually passing that on, because it's only what's on a bill. So I used to tell the example, I worked in Amherst and Deerfield, and in Amherst, the bill was, and I'll finish this up, the $50, and included 5% of gross revenues to the town. In Deerfield and Sunderland, they didn't get 5%, they got nothing. What was the cost on the bill? $50. So in other words, that while yes, there's a relationship, there's no guarantee if you would say to a cable company, give us nothing, give us absolutely nothing, that your bill is going to be lower. You don't know. It depends on what they decide as a business, which is the way private business works. They make their pricing decisions. So with that, let me take you through the sum and substance of where the license is now. And let me give this one, Pen, I had a,
Do you mean to make a copy?
yeah, well, I gave you, I have one page here. That's what I sent earlier. Oh, and I didn't send it, here it is. Let me
Oh,
get-
it's double-sided.
Oh, yes. Did everyone have one? No, you don't have it. So let me,
I'll just make a copy real quick.
okay, here it is. It's there's two of them, though. Is it two there? Yeah, okay, you want copy, thank you.
Well, most of this is, I know Comcast always looked at that as a nuisance. Like legitimately, it was a nuisance.
The in-kind consideration?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't think they ever did anything with it.
That's right.
The whole time I was there.
That's right. Well, they were going to do something on the cable service to public buildings, because the FCC says, oh, no, you can't waive this. Company, if you want to not, no, you're supposed to do it. So I think they decided, okay, we'll do it for cable service to public buildings, because we can work with the towns on that. And they were trying to figure out what, they might say there's a bulk rate, they would figure something out. So I think they could say, oh, to their industry, oh yeah, we did it, great, leave us
Yeah,
alone.
it was a
Because-
shell game, though.
That's right, because it was more hassle than it would be benefit. And then as they were working it out and trying to do some agreements to say, well, we're working it out, but we want you to know, which I didn't agree to. Then what happened, right, they were going to have it in December, then it was January, then it was February, and then what happened in March? COVID. It's gone for 2 years, they more important things to do than try to figure out how you charge Jimmy and Sally for cable. And of course, if you're not at 5% of gross revenues, it makes no difference anyway. It only affects you, the town, if it puts you to the 5% of gross revenues, because if it got there, then what they paid you for franchise fee for PEG support, they would decrease it, because otherwise they'd be above the 5%. So we're not at 5% here, so it wouldn't affect. So let me take you through this, because this is the meat and potatoes of where we want to figure out where to be. We have here the subscriber numbers on top. Like other systems, the numbers have gone down. The last license was in 2013. So November 2013. So the subscriber number back then was 2,341 in December of that year, and the year before even 2,360. So 2,341. We're at 1,969 as of December 31st, 2021. So that's a 15.8% reduction in subscribers.
And it's going to keep going down.
That's likely. Now, the PEG operating, this is what the license provides. It was 47,000 the first year. Year 2 was 100,000. Year 3, 115,000. Then year 4, 119. Oh, well, year 4 onward, it'd be a 3% increase each year. So that would have been 119,000. This is what's possible under the license. So then I've done the math for years 5 to 10. So if that license, if the town, and the town did not implement those numbers, but if the town had wanted to, the annual support would be 142,714. But that's, at this point, that's probably, I've done the math, we don't have their gross revenue sheets, which we'll talk about, but that's above the 5% actually at this point. So that's where you would have been. On the other hand, the town, and I think the town's transitioned a little bit. I think as you've explained to me, as the town finances have improved here, as the economy was in a better place, that there's now a focus on the value of what this does, and everything has a cost. You don't want to waste money, but at the same time, so I think at that point, Kevin, and you remember, that at that point there was a desire to, let's not go up to the full amount, and so now you're receiving, is it 80? Give me the number you get a year.
So
Last year, yeah.
But anyhow, now that you're there,
last year, well, for this year, we got,
Operating just, yeah.
83,130.
Okay. So,
No, we got 71,526.
okay, whatever it is, it's somewhere in 70-something, 80-something.
Yeah.
So what I think we should do, and we have the number that, the operating number that Pat has worked on, using a, fine pencil on it, And that number was 113. Let me get to the number again. I apologize, Pat, I had it.
Oh, from the ascertainment?
Yeah, the
doc?
ascertainment, yeah, your operating number, I'm sorry. I think it's 113. Let me go.
What does this screenshot say about?
Operating 119,520.
Okay, 119,520. So what I think we should do, now let me also say that in calculating the gross revenue, and each year, if the town asked, the charters would give you the gross revenue for each quarter, or at least a year, because you paid it in a year, the gross revenue for a year, and so what I'd like to do is ask Charter for that. The license provides that. Most licenses I do, they just have to provide it. But I'd like to get, at least for the current year and maybe last year, I'd like to ask them to give us the gross revenue sheets that has the breakdown, as you know, Kevin, and Fred, right? Yeah. Fred, it'll have basic and expanded basic and digital and equipment and advertising and home shopping and things like that. And just to see what that was. But assuming, with the number of subscribers here of 1,969, and using a number, I think of like a gross revenue per month of $110, it may be higher, it may be a little lower, but then I think it came out to 119,520 at 5%. So we're going to be capped by the 5%, regardless of what number we have in there. But I thought what the town should do, since you have a track record of not asking or request asking for what you're entitled to, but looking at it more conservatively, you have a track record of saying, well, we could have got this much, but now we need this, so we don't have to get all the money. I think we should take the same position going forward. I think we should have the number around the number that, if you agree, that Pat's come up with as a potential, as an operating budget there of the 119,520, and then have each year increasing by 3%. We have some risk there, because if we do have mega inflation, 3% will cover that. But that's, and continue the same language, that even from the first year and every year afterwards, although I'd like to go to quarterly payments, I think that would help your cash flow, but that each year, though, you'd have the ability to say, well, like you do now, well, you know what, we don't need the 119, we can do it on this. So I think the advantage of that, it gives us, in you at town, the same flexibility you have now to get the higher number. You're going up from the 70s, 80,000 to the license of 119. But saying, we'll look every year and we'll continue to let you.
Accordingly.
Yeah, accordingly. And by the way, although again, we have the 5% cap, if we had done that every year, in theory, we would have been at 142,000, albeit that's above the 5% cap. So I think that's a good way to do it, because we have a track record. You don't have to judge, except what we say, we have a track record of this is the town that spends money prudently and effectively. On the capital payment last time was $169,000. 100,000 within 30 days, 50,000 within the first anniversary, 19,000 on the fifth anniversary. So $169,000. Now, if you divide that by 1,969 subscribers, the current number, that's $85.83 per subscriber. You know what? I think that's an okay, it doesn't meet what your needs are, but remember, our needs are the needs as we see it. They're not balanced by cost. So I think using that same number for the current license, is a good place to be, because it's, the Charter could say, well, you're down with, we're down subscribers. Well, you're down. They're down 15.8%. But if we look at your revenues since that time are up 40%. 30% at least, and well, you can ask that they provide the numbers, but I know based on what I do, their revenues are going to be anywhere from 25 to 30, 35% more. So if we would have lower the capital number 15.8% because of fewer subscribers, we want to increase it, 25, 30%. So I like the negotiating position, and with public here, so you can find out. I like the same place. because I think it's unreasonable for a cable company to say that's not a reasonable position. And the way cable negotiation works, with all companies, it's different companies in different ways, that when you have a reasonable position, and we can make that, and we'll be public with that, if the other side is unreasonable, it puts us in a better negotiating position, because, there's no upside for a multi-billion-dollar company with a good corporate name to bully a town around to tell them we don't want to pay you what we paid 10 years ago. So,
They have to be thinking that we're naive. Subscriber numbers don't directly tie to gross profitability of an organization, especially in cable.
That's right. Because as you know, cable companies will say, well, that's their business, they just want to, but that's correct. And so what I see here on the operating is the 119, 250, 520, we could round that off or not. The right to increase 3% each year. That increase each year, I think, would be as it's intended now. If you don't do it that year, it's gone. It's not like it builds up. It's not like you do 6%. Nope, yeah, next year you can increase 3%. The same capital as before. The only issue on the capital is the timing of that. Now, and of course, on operating funds can be used for capital, so, but the timing on that would be something I think we discussed at another meeting, whether it's acceptable to take it over 10 years and take it as, I think as it is now, the 16,900 a year. If that works, then there's some benefits from that that are derived, but we didn't have that in the current license. So, Pat, it comes down to how much, do you see your capital needs being more upfront at this time? Because 10 years is a long time, particularly with inflation.
It's fairly spread out.
All right, so then, what if we consider, last time they paid $100,000 upfront, and then, as I said, then 50, and then 19. What if we then take a position of one half of the $169,000 upfront, and the rest, and the other half spread out over 10 years? So it divides it up. It's, again, more favorable for them than it was before, but gets you half of that capital in year one. Now maybe that's giving them too much. I leave that to you. When it's spread over 10 years, they don't apply for that portion this crazy 11.25% interest rate that they can charge their subscribers. So when it's paid more upfront, a rule that came in during high inflation 30, 40 years ago allows them to put on their subscribers' bill 11.25% interest. So by spreading out half of it over 10 years, they would not do that. But by the same token, you get half now because you have real capital needs up front.
Do we have anything like huge up front that's needed?
I don't have any real plan as far as build out or anything. It's all replacement. So it's like, when this PA system would probably be fairly expensive to replace. Maybe my broadcast server, that, you know what I mean, when we do different projects, but I have them spread out so that we don't get hit, all at once.
Well, that's a good question. Then the question is does it work for the town to get it over 10 years? I mean, of course, inflation will eat away at that, but if you're not going to need it till later, if it was all the same to you to get it over 10 years, there is that not having the interest rate, which is crazy, applied, and particularly if we balance that with the operating we're looking at, that maybe that might be a good balance, that to take it over 10 years as a benefit to the subscribers. I mean, I would say you're a resident, but they're their subscribers, their customers, so that we balance that, and again, really have a very strong position to say, this is all reasonable. We could have come in a lot of different ways. We got paid up front, but we can accept taking it because we worked out a payment plan. So if there's an appeal of getting rid of the 11.25% interest, which is crazy that they charge, they don't have to, but they can, then you could take it over 10 years. I leave that to you to think about.
My thought process is, as those payments come in, schedule doing upgrade, replace of your equipment. Like, we may not even have to do 50% upfront. Like, you could do 25% or 10% upfront just to cover this year's things, and then spread the rest out over the next 10 years of the license agreement. And as those come in, say, all right, I'm buying new cameras, I'm buying new,
Right.
and if there's a large capital expense, put it on capital.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's,
Okay.
I don't have anything that would be, like last time, we had a very solid plan to build a studio right away, so we needed a lot of upfront, and then that, for the reasons that the second floor fell apart, things like that, we didn't end up going with it. So this time, we don't have any large capital plan right off the bat. Like I said, it's really just replacing all the current systems.
What about as low as 20% then? I mean, you could even lower, but that's 33,000.
Yeah.
I think that would be, yeah.
Would that work?
And it, like you said, it saves the interest rate off the resident, off their bill.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I could definitely do that.
And that's enough capital to get some of the stuff that you wanted to get done next year done.
Yeah, yep.
That works.
And I don't think I have nothing expensive for a couple of years, so.
Do we save that as a bargaining point, though?
Well, I have to say, for some reason, my instinct is, because it's a multi-billion-dollar companies, and I always say, like, the town, people come in, I want them $1 million, and then they say no, and they go, what about 900,000? No, and the more they say no, and you keep on going down, they think they can just keep on going down. So but I go too far with sometimes wanting to really have the reasonable position, because you got to give the other side some room to feel like they made a change. So, Fred, with that said, is to say that I think we could take the position that, most of it was up front last time. There's some benefits to that for inflation reasons and for, not having to worry that something breaks and we don't have the money, but we're prepared to take it over time and if we get this whole deal done. So if you like, we can, on that position, say, here's where the last license was, here's the reasons why that something like that would still make sense, but we're prepared to take it, much of it over time if everything else comes into place.
Well, I think it starts negotiations off well. It looks like a good faith gesture, number one. And it shows that you're coming into the table with a concession up front, which is going to make them most likely to concede. Having been on a couple of the negotiations with PEGs with Comcast,
Yeah.
we were the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Right.
So more often than not, when a municipality came forward being reasonable, you were treated in kind.
Yeah. No, so I think the only question would be, do we want to be reasonable with a terra firma number, or do we want to be reasonable with, we can take it, we have great flexibility on this because we want to be reasonable. If we can do that, does this get this deal done? In
Yeah.
other words, so if your thought of keeping a little powder dry, but letting them know we can be reasonable, and so I think it's the best of both worlds if you're with it. All right, so let's do that.
I have up there, right, just with the current outlook, that's so it looks like our capital, the most expensive stuff we have would be right in the middle of this license, so, I don't think that our upfront stuff isn't, we don't get really expensive for a few years here.
Good, all right, so I think that works well, and maybe that number, we maybe end up at the number you suggested, but try to use that as a way to move the whole package. All right, so then with that said, the current license had the Simon Fairfield Library as one of the three connections with the new fiber, the municipal center here, the high school, and the library. But as Pat has told me many times, at the time, the town wasn't needing that or ready for that, so they told Charter, no need to do that. So now, the license, we're sort of at the, sometimes it's a license where you have a right to do something, and if it's going to be difficult to get the company to agree, you say, all right, no big deal. We don't have to agree in the next license. You got to do it now. I don't think we should do that here, but I think we should say, in the current license, in good faith, we said it wasn't ready then, the town wasn't ready, but now it is, and we'd like to continue that in the new license. In theory, we could say to you, do it now. It's every bit of, when a license is still in effect, unless it's say you have to ask within 6 months or a year or something, the license is as much in effect now as it was back then. And in theory, we could say, well, we want you to do it, but we don't deal like that. What we just need we need it in the new license. Now, the challenge here is that there's nothing that they could charge you for that. Instead, they could pass the cost through to their subscribers. And I think we were looking for the same thing. And so that would be one location for 10 years. Last time we had 2 were built, and now we'd have 1. So we're at 50% of where we were last time, which seems like a fair position. We talked about asking for the 3 HD channels, 1 up front, and we'd like to have some provisions during the 10 years term where there's some terra firma as to doing it. At least if it becomes, and this is harder to judge, if it becomes something that is commonly done by charter, then it would need to be done here. So we're not gonna, let's not fight about it now, but let's just have it that if it's commonly done by charter, and we can figure out,
If you're doing it for everybody else,
yeah,
we'd like
I
it.
don't know if we use the whole Commonwealth, a certain area, then we think that, and then we'll do, we think then you need to do it here if we ask with a 12 months notice. Now, sometimes what I do on that is, on HD, is to say, when you get really late, it's like the next license. So that if it's commonly done, agreed to as part of renewals, I'd say is reasonably, I don't usually do this, reasonably judged by both parties, or reasonably judged, then they would need to do it here upon written notice, 12 months. But the notice would be given no later than, I would say, year 6, because then, or it's year 7, because that would mean years 8, 9, and 10 of the 3-year renewal window. You know what? It's part of the next license.
Yeah.
But if it's before year 7 or before, then it's not left behind. We don't have to fight about this, but we just don't want to be left behind. Right?
Makes sense.
Okay. Electronic program guide, we talked about, we'd like it now, and if not, and if there's, can you tell us what, any reason that can't happen, and then we can talk about that, and then if we feel it's a valid reason, we want it during the term of the license. Video on demand, I think we're past that, as you indicated yourself, Kevin, that PEG access video on demand on television, people do it on the internet. To me, that used to be the really big thing before things were streamed, but now the electronic program guide is just a lot more important than having PEG access video on demand on cable. So my recommendation is to, and we did not put it down in the ascertainment report because we didn't think there was enough of a need for it. Okay.
No, with streaming services being what they are, no.
Okay. And then cable service to public buildings we talked about, we want that in the license. I'll take a look at what they're agreeing to. I have some
We might have
language
a new public police station, fire station. They're just talking about it now.
Yep.
Maybe new plans for that, new buildings are possible,
Yeah, there are new buildings possible.
and they would need access. Is that what you mean by that?
Cable service.
Yeah, cable service,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
boxes, yeah.
Police station, is that something,
I think they pay for their box right
no,
now.
but on connecting,
Well, they're in this building, so it would be,
oh, they're already connected, okay.
yeah.
So I think that's really it. I think what we would do is, and I'll give you the timing of the process here. The license is up in November 17th. So what you do in cable, you work back under now there's the formal process, and the informal process. The formal process, every agreement is agreed through the informal negotiation. But since cable companies, in most cases, but not all instances, still provide a formal proposal 4 months before the expiration, we want to be sure to formally give them our ascertainment. So working back from November 17th, we go back 4 months, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be July 17th, would be that we would get a proposal, by July 17th, get a proposal. It's a Sunday. And we would typically want to give them what I call a we request for response to ascertainment. You normally call it a request for proposal, but like towns would get confused. They think of like a town RFP and multiple bidders. So I call it a request for Comcast Charter's response to ascertainment. Here's our ascertainment, give us a formal response. Providing that, because they're going to give us a license proposal, formal proposal. And think of it as litigation. Like in litigation, you might have filings you have to make with the court, and there may be, sometimes it's a formal process, they can offer something in a formal setting. But that's not where the case is going to get solved. So in the litigation, the company might say, we weren't there, we didn't do it, we didn't hit the car, the product didn't hurt the person, if it did hurt them, there were no damages, or if there were damages, we're not legally responsible. That's their formal position. But at the table, the negotiating table, a company might say, well, we can give you $1 million, and you negotiate that. So we're going to get this done at the table. But at the same time, this litigation is going on under this Formal Cable Act because they prefer to protect their rights under that act. And if they protect their rights, we want to protect our interest. We don't want a proposal from them that where they could say, well, we didn't give them all our needs and interests. So we're going to give them at least a month before that. I guess it would be, say December, November. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So in June, we would give them at least June, a month before, the ascertainment together with legalese and asking them to do things. But before that, we'll do two things. One is now we'll have the hearing, and then we'll sit down with them at the table, present this ascertainment, have the discussion, and hopefully get to some sort of agreement. So with that, let's talk about the hearing. Now, one of the things I want to send, lots of good hearings, but I did one in Falmouth. Falmouth is about the best. I mean, you're as good as they are given their size, but Falmouth has this big local economy. It has science, the oceanographic stuff. It has all sorts of cultural stuff. So it was 2.5 hours, but just very impressive. I'm going to give you that just to look at parts of it, to get a sense of if you and there are other places, Easton, great communities too, but not as involved. But I'll give you the Falmouth one because it was fairly recent and fairly good to look at. So the hearing would be that we ask people if they can come and tell us, is this important to you, and if so, how? Not just advertise it and hope people come, but really have people from the town officials and school officials, and if they're community groups or business groups or some producers, and that would be something that would typically could take at least an hour, could take an hour and a half. And one of the things I say, it's the one time where you can repeat something that someone else said. That people go crazy when there are 5 people that said the same thing in most meetings. But you could be at a cable hearing, and there's 15 people, which is not a lot, and 2 people get up and say how great something is, and they think people, well, they've already said that. I'm not going to be one of those people who just repeats it. And you sit down with the cable company, and they say, only 2 people spoke. Only 2 people said it mattered. So now's your chance. It's once every 10 years. Let us know what you think. So with that, I recommend that we have put together a good hearing, and that has a great effect on the government affairs person. They realize, wow, this town really cares about this. And if they're a cable person who I think, if the same person's doing it here, they used to work for Comcast, and now they work for Charter. John Marr. I don't know John. So they believe in what they do. So that it impacts them. They no longer think they can give you a lowball offer or you don't care about it. So now that hearing should be before we get to the time we have to send the RFP. So it just depends on the time of year. There's the time of year, like the best time to get a license done is between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we're not. That's so we could aim for that. Then the hearing would be, in November, and you need to be far enough away from Thanksgiving and stuff because no one wants to come out. I think the hearing should be in person and remote, so people can be home and participate. Or we could wait till the next year, and we have certainly time to do that. But there's no time like the present, and this world's changing. So if you thought we could put together a good hearing in November
Of this year?
of this year, then we would sit down with Charter, and we might sit down with Charter before the hearing. I think that's a good idea. Sit down with Charter before the hearing, make sure they come to the hearing, and then after the hearing, sit down again and see if we can, in the words of Thanksgiving, talk turkey.
Works for me.
Works for me. Is it going to work for them? It's not a lot of time to, but they say we can't make it out.
Oh, well, I think they'll, it's only a question of how soon. So I think that's far enough away. They have.
They're anything like Comcast. They have all the time in the world to do those things.
Yeah.
They have a very large staff that does nothing but deal with us.
Yeah, well, I would say they're not. Unfortunately, like Comcast, there's no company like Comcast who employees are great. They treat their employees well. They give them responsibility. They can go back and talk to people. Charter's much more of the one-man show sort of stuff. But that said, that's their job. So it's long enough away. So let's think about November, because we're not even in October yet. And I think it should be the beginning of, we have election day too, right? But, I don't know, maybe, let's see, election day is a week later here, yeah, the 8th. What about what's the best day of the week? This would be you as a subcommittee holding the hearing. What night?
Well, Tuesdays are out, because you never know if you got a Board of Selectmen meeting.
Right.
But I would say Thursdays would be the best for me.
Yeah, and the only thing that's regular on Thursday is planning board, so if we just go on an opposite week of them, we should be able to get like this room and everything. And
How about November?
so
third?
they meet on the 8th and the 22nd, it looks like.
Well, what about the 3rd? After elections, everyone's like something. So what about the 3rd?
Oh, wait, November. Yeah, that's an off night for the planning board, so
Yeah, we could do that.
I can do that.
November 3rd,
Yeah.
and just like a 7 PM normal, yeah.
Timing-wise, it goes two ways. With remote, I think nowadays 7 PM is okay with remote. In the pre-remote world, or hybrid world, I used to say sometimes like earlier, because like,
You got to drive there, drive back.
yeah, kids are home, and it gets dark early. But I think on a 7, then you get people out, with remote, I think you're okay,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I mean, I was just throwing that out there.
No, I think it's good. No,
7's good?
2 years ago, I would said
Standard meeting
6:30.
time.
Right.
That's our standard meeting time.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I think that's good. So then we would also, we get notice, we'd, and I think we should meet with John, if it's John, whoever it is, beforehand, and, and present these types of things, so we'll give him this ascertainment and everything else and what it means. Then he'll have some more context for the hearing, and say to him, John, we'd really like you to be there in person if you can.
Yeah, we're not catching them flat-footed.
Yeah, so then,
So maybe October meet with,
yeah, in October, and, because Halloween is the 31st, it's a Monday, so what about the week before that? What's the best night for you folks? Is it Thursday? I mean, let's do daytime, if you can do daytime.
if it's the week before that, it looks like, so Board of Selectmen meets,
Well, no, a daytime.
oh,
Yeah,
date,
if you guys can make, because I'm sure he doesn't want to,
oh, yeah, that's up to you
Daytime,
guys.
maybe.
yeah, I want to meet, we want him in person.
Gotcha.
And he doesn't want to be at night.
For daytime meetings, like Thursdays are usually my lightest days at work, too.
Oh,
Thursday's your longest day at work?
Lightest.
Oh,
okay. Sure.
so do you want to leave that, do you want to,
I'll have to contact him, yeah. But let's just think, so one possibility is late morning, okay, again?
That's fine.
11 worked out well, is that okay? So maybe Douglas at 11. Now, if that doesn't work for him, would Wednesday work?
I could make it work.
Okay, so Douglas, 11. This is number 2.
So
This-
what date?
This, the 27th, the first option, and the 26th, the second option. So some flexibility with a charter person.
Did you say 11 a.m.?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That good?
I tend not to be very flexible with charter. Old habit.
That's good. They took over our Time Warner system out west, and there was a breach, so the attorney used to be in Massachusetts with Vince Levin, I'm forgetting his name now. So,
You let us know.
Do you know how close it
Yeah.
came to Charter being part of Comcast?
Okay.
well, I was, Paul Abbott, if you know Paul Abbott, used to be, I'd go to the hearings, the transfer hearings, and I'd say to the Comcast folks, and by the way, Charter had, who was the guy who did all Charter? He was great. We did it with him here. Who was the government affairs person? Not Green, but, oh my goodness, he was great. It was a one-man show. Massachusetts, New York, and they had him then go to Ohio, which he had grown up or something, and they pushed him out. He was amazing. He just did so much work and did a good job at it. But I go to the hearings, and I'd say to the Comcast folks, I think there's a good chance this won't be approved on the federal level. And they're going to be, absolutely not, we don't compete anywhere with Charter, so no. And I said, I don't know, I can't, I wouldn't bet the house that this gets approved. And they thought I was out of my mind, and of course, it didn't get approved.
Yeah, it went right to the 11th hour and then fell apart.
Yeah, well, the feds, yeah. Where I sit, the competition's good. The competition of Cablevision does this, and Charter does this, and Comcast does this. It creates a world where like states are laboratories, companies are laboratories for trying different things. And it's not good, as much as Comcast is a great company, it's still not good to have one company have the whole state. It changes the political dynamics and everything else. So I was hoping it wouldn't be approved. And even though I wasn't a fan, and I think now Charter has some new team, and remember, Charter went through bankruptcies. Now Charter is a far different company that's hitting on its cylinders, where back then it had some hard times.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll try to get. Do we have a senior discount? I don't think they.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can take a look to see what that is.
Sure.
If you don't know, have some senior call up and find out. Senior discount. We'll put these papers together. So Pat's going to ask about the senior discount. You want to find out how important is cable service to public buildings? Can you find out from the town and the schools if they say, well, we couldn't care less, or we think it's very important? If you could find that out as a, Pat.
You mean just getting like boxes to the,
Like, if you didn't get cable service, would it matter?
I know to the fire department it would.
They probably pay, though, because they get so much service. They probably pay.
I don't know if they do or not.
I'm not sure. I know the police do, because when he was just doing the Capitol tour, he was talking about
Okay,
that.
can you check, Pat, if you don't mind, or one of the members here? Sure. Check with police and fire, if they pay, because they get extra services.
In highway?
Yeah, check with those. And if they did it, so if they pay, it doesn't really matter, because they don't need free service, because they get more. But check if anyone in town hall, if it makes a difference, emergencies and crises, and the schools.
Okay.
If you could. So, so we know if it doesn't really matter, then and Charter has a position this way or that way, we can decide what we want to do about it.
Senior center?
Yeah, I was going to ask the
Yeah,
senior center,
center's
library.
probably, you're right, that's the place they want it. Any thoughts, questions? I think we've gone over a lot. All good?
No, I'm good. I don't have any thoughts or questions at this time.
Well, thank you. You're great. It really puts us in a good, I think we went over a lot, and I think we have a good place to be. I'll write these things up as like bullet points and stuff, and then we should, we need to decide as we get closer whether we should just meet up ourselves once before.
We should.
Yeah, and, that might be a meeting I just do remotely.
Yeah.
But today had to be in person.
Before the October meeting with.
Before, yeah, so let's take a look at that schedule.
Yeah. I would say like a week before.
Yeah. So what about Thursday's good, October 20th,
Yep.
right? Anytime, because I'm remote.
Anytime.
Okay. You want me to set it up for 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
That works. All right.
Thank you. Good seeing you again, Kevin. Thank you. And thanks, folks, for having me back. And I'll be speaking to Mike Kaczynski next week and Millis.
Tell them I said hi.
I will.
So before we sign off?
Yeah.
Just if people watching have any questions about the process, if they want to reach out to you, how do they reach you?
So they can reach me 508-476-4000, extension 222, or email me at cable@douglas-ma.org, cable@douglas-ma.gov, not .org. I think I said
.gov.
org first. Yeah, it's .gov. Yeah, or reach out through Facebook, something like that.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.